Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, this is a topic that kind of leans more in the self-care realm, but let's be real, this does bleed over into every single aspect of your life, both personally and professionally. I want to talk about your immune system. How have you been feeling lately? I mean, really. Over the last few months with the COVID-19 pandemic, and many of us in lockdown all around the world, our lives have changed in every single aspect. How we work, where we work, how we take care of ourselves and our regular routines when it comes to food and exercise, sleep and stress and all of that. So I wanted to find just the right expert to help us simplify how to boost our immune system. And that, my friends, is Dr. Uma Naidoo. Now, Michelin star chef David Bouley describes her as the world's first triple threat in the food as medicine space. She's a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, professional chef, and a nutrition specialist. Her niche work is actually specifically in nutritional psychiatry, and she's regarded both nationally and internationally as a medical pioneer in this field. Now, she's been seen all over. Wall Street Journal, ABC News, Harvard Health Press, Goop, and so many others. And she really has a special interest on the impact of food on mood and other mental health conditions. She's also the author of the upcoming book, This Is Your Brain on Food, showing the cutting-edge science, explaining the ways in which food contributes to our mental health and can treat and prevent a wide range of health issues. We're talking ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, and more. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Dr. Uma Naidoo. Hey, Dr. Uma.
Hi, Mary. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're
here.
That. Yes, of course. And, I feel like this is such an important topic to talk about. And anybody that's listening, grab a journal, grab a pen. I feel like you're about to be this fountain of wonderful knowledge that we all need. And let's just be real, Uma. It's stressful right now, to say the least, right?
Absolutely.
So why do you think it's so important to focus on boosting our immune system? I mean, especially now.
Absolutely. So, there's sort of before pandemic times and there's moving forward is how I think about it, because we still not entirely clear and we're hopeful about the pandemic. And the reason I split it up like that is that people who were previously pretty healthy and from a mental standpoint, really not someone who suffered with anxiety, depression, things have really not felt good for people during the pandemic, and more people are feeling stressed, more people are feeling down, anxious, symptoms are on the rise, and in the US we have a shortage of medication called Zoloft, sertraline, which also speaks to the very enhanced number of prescriptions that have been going on through the pandemic. Yeah. We don't yet have the data on exact numbers of the rise, but as psychiatrists practicing, we know that it's increased. Where the immune system becomes so vital here is that it's not just linked to your physical health. And part of my book really breaks down for people the fact that we know we should eat differently for hypertension. We know we should change our diet if we have elevated cholesterol. But many people don't take that to the mental health realm. Many people don't make that connection. While people say very often, oh, you are what you eat, they don't really realize it's related to mood, anxiety, and many, many other mental health symptoms. And that's where the immune system comes into play, because all of this is mediated through the gut-brain connection.
Yep.
And a very large portion of our immune system is in the gut. So, I think that it becomes important from that perspective to take care of ourselves moving forward.
And that reminds me of a previous conversation I had with Dr. Daniel on how to improve your gut health. And that, he mentioned also the gut-brain axis. So tell us once again, What does that mean?
Absolutely. So, when we look in the mirror, we don't really think, except for being in the same body, the brain and the gut are pretty far apart.
Yeah.
But embryologically speaking, going back to before we were born, the sperm and egg formed a zygote, and cells started to form, and our organs started to form. And as they formed from those same two cells, a vagus nerve emerged. And that vagus nerve, up until now, connects the actual gut to the brain. And it becomes almost a pathway, a freeway, a highway of neurochemical and biological information that gets transmitted up and down. So it's almost like this communicating pathway between the gut and the brain. So when you eat something and it goes into your stomach, your gut, and it starts the process of whatever's going to happen to it and the breakdown of food, there are ways in which good choices in terms of food, high fiber foods, fresh vegetables and fruit, even frozen, as long as there's no sugar added or added salt or syrup, are good. They help the good bugs. They therefore help your immunity. Is one of the, probably, this is called the Simplifiers podcast. But so it kind of very simply, you eat the good food, it feeds you good bugs. And that keeps you in a good balance. And you eat the bad foods and the opposite happens.
So Dr. Uma, I'm going to admit right now on the podcast, my brain goes coffee and shortbread cookies and tacos. These are the things that we need today, Mary. So let's make that happen, right?
Absolutely.
So how do we rewire our gut brain axis to start to actually see the good foods that are actually good for us, rather than immediately having the knee-jerk reaction and wanting the sugar, the caffeine, the deep-fried whatever?
Exactly. So, speaking of the current times, that stress level that we're feeling, that sense of angst, uncertainty, lack of financial safety, so many things that are going on, so much of the things that are unknown. People are naturally stressed, and that whole reaction of the excess cortisol in our body and the stress reaction also then helps us make really poor choices, and we get into these sort of bad habits when we feel stressed. But here's the thing about it. It's people really aren't to blame, because the immediate feeling is you feel good. That shortbread cookie and coffee tastes and feels good, at least for a good half hour. Then you don't think about it and you move on to the rest of your day. The issue, Mary, is that it's the long-term effect of those choices. You don't, in the immediate time, you feel good. The actual reaction chemically, the serotonin does take a bump, and you feel okay. But it's the long-term negative effects of this that lead to the inflammation in your gut that then can spread through that pathway and cause neuroinflammation in your brain. And, poor food choices are linked to depression, to anxiety, to ADHD. They're linked to so many disorders through that gut mechanism. So I say to people, rather than making those things a habit, because habit circuits in our brain are also get set up. And what we're talking about is almost rewiring that, like rethinking how do we make better choices.
Yep.
And for me, I say to people, rather have a treat day once a week, so that you have the cookies you like, and maybe it's the ice cream, the pizza, whatever it is that you crave, the mac and cheese. Enjoy it on that day, but then reset at the next meal or the next day, and obviously pay attention to portion control. I'm not saying eat 3 pizzas. I'm saying enjoy what you usually would, but make that your treat day so that you don't feel deprived. Yeah. Because what happens if you say to people, well, don't eat this and don't eat that. I don't really like the word diet. I say to people, can we cut back on this? Can we exchange that? Can we use these foods instead of that? And what's your favorite food? Well, you pick a day of the week and continue to have that. Yeah. But if you can work on the other days and the other meals, being really careful about the added sugars, the added sodium, the wrong types of fats, all of that, and add in fiber, all the nutrients that come from beans, legumes, fruit and vegetables, nuts and seeds, it'll balance out. It'll balance out without you having the negative effect.
And I really, really want to, at the little bit later in the conversation, to give people an idea of like how to stock your pantry. What are the good foods? What are the get really down to brass tacks there. But before we get there, I also wonder, I've had a few conversations about it. I've obviously seen my own eating patterns and my own mental wellness and how it directly is linked. And I 100% agree. I also wonder, though, in this day and age of busy, we eat food so unconsciously now. We eat food while we're typing an email. We eat food in a car on the way to somewhere else. That food, the actual art and process, the ritual, if you will, of having a meal is so like not even linked into time, space, and reality. You don't even taste the food. You're just shoveling it in your mouth just so you can get to your 2:00 appointment. Is there part of that that's also at play here that needs the rewiring of how we approach the ritual of preparing and eating food?
Absolutely. That's an excellent point, Mary, because I think that modern day life, and doctors are very guilty of this because we're always running and eating and standing and eating and walking and talking and eating.
Yeah.
And it's a bad habit that we need to change, but it's sort of changing from mindless eating to mindful eating, right? It's how do you set up your day, and perhaps this pause that we are experiencing due to the pandemic, almost imposed for very important health reasons, is an opportunity to reset in some of those ways. So if you're working from home, even though you would have the whole family at home, and in that way it can be more stressful. It's not that we don't love our families, but it just adds to a different kind of work schedule and work day. Yep. But this may be an opportunity to reset around those things. Maybe it's just for you. Maybe the other part of your family helps during the day, and you take care of those responsibilities in the evening.
Yep.
And so maybe if you break it down to how can I make sure that I get my breakfast in, my lunch in, and sometimes it's actually it's as basic as it may seem silly, but sometimes it's actually scheduling in those things to improve self-care because. And I do think self-care has different components, but even scheduling, well, if I get up at 5, I get up at 6 or whatever it is, I'm going to have breakfast between maybe this 15 or half-hour break, which allows you to prepare the breakfast if you need to, plus eat it mindfully. I'm not going to be checking my email at that point, watching the news or anything, and it's up to you to make that decision.
Yeah.
Same thing with lunch. You shut the computer off in this virtual world of ours, and you decide, I'm going to go make that healthy salad, or maybe I prepared it this morning or the night before, and same thing with dinner.
Yeah.
If the whole family is involved, I usually say to people, still schedule it, and then, build in a fun activity at that time. And by that I mean, enjoy it. Take a step back from your work, shut off the phone, unless you have a beep and you're on call. I do understand that's a different level of responsibility. But if you can do that, perhaps try to build it in a very deliberate way.
Yeah.
Because your mind then, like it picks up the 10 a.m. meeting, it's going to say, oh, lunchtime. Okay, let me go do that. And I think that switching sets in terms of just how the brain wiring works is also good for you. You switch sets, you leave the computer, you go have your lunch, and you come back, and you feel somewhat refreshed and somewhat ready. But I so agree that we have to change that dynamic.
And it sounds like from what I hear you say there is a reprioritization of eating and food prep altogether. Because I think for a lot of us, especially entrepreneurs, we kind of put that at the very bottom of our to-do list. But when you give your lunch, your breakfast, the same weight and priority as your client calls or meetings, then that is built into your schedule. I mean, for example, everything lives and dies on my Google Calendar. If it doesn't exist on the Google Calendar, it doesn't happen in my world.
Exactly.
So,
That's a great point.
I put it into my calendar as well. So that means that when I hand out my scheduler link to clients or otherwise, then there's no chance of them ever booking in when is a meal. So it's simple little shifts and adjustments there that also sets you up for success rather than going, oh crap, I have a call in 5 minutes and I haven't eaten lunch and it's already 2:00 in the afternoon.
Right. And I don't know, Mary, if you experienced this during the pandemic, but many of my clients have said, Sunday becomes Monday, and I didn't even realize the weekend passed by because everyone's home. And, it might just be that you don't have a Zoom meeting on a Sunday, but that dynamic of flow has broken down the structure of our work days.
Yeah.
And so it could also be an opportunity. As a psychiatrist, I'm very used to reframing things and helping people with the psychological aspect of it. And maybe it's reframing it and it's saying, okay, so whatever day of the week it is, I don't care if it's Sunday, or maybe Sunday is a more relaxed day or your treat day, but building it in is so important because then you don't forget it.
Yeah.
And you get a reminder.
Yeah. And as you say, changing your environment, whether it's getting up from your desk and going to a table or going out to the back garden and sitting in the sunshine, getting a little bit of vitamin D doesn't hurt. So
Exactly.
I know from looking at your website and from your book, there are 5 key areas to what you call for better brain health. Now, I want you to tell us in very, very simple terms, because these are very professional, very like medical industry kind of big words, let's just say. So I want you to simplify them down.
Sure. So the way I'll talk about it is in basic terms, and I'll give you kind of pointers to pay attention to. So we touched on how to pay attention to immunity, and I speak about something that I call an emotional immunity. And the big word here is that there have been studies in psychoneuroimmunology that have linked the gut and the mood. But for our purposes, it really comes down to what are you consuming? How is it affecting your gut-brain axis, and how is it affecting your immunity? Because there are so many immune cells right there in your gut that get impacted. And what you want to prevent is a negative imbalance of your gut bacteria. So there are about 39 trillion bugs in our gut. Some doctors will even say we are more bacteria than we are human cells. There's actually a paper on that. But the reality is that they live down there. And if you take care of them, they'll take care of you. So I simplify the emotional immunity around eat the right way, fiber-rich foods, fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, legumes, beans, that type of thing. That's really going to help feed the good guys. And you're going to get a lot of nutrients from those foods as you do it. It also then leads to the process of if you're not doing that, if you're eating the French fries, and many people don't realize that fast food French fries in the U.S. have added sugar, for example. So you may think, I'm getting the small size, and I'm getting the salad with this meal. But the fact of the matter is the poor fats, the oils that are used in that, all of the wrong stuff in the processing start to cause inflammation. And the inflammation in your gut leads to neuroinflammation. What that really means is that think about that vagus nerve again, and the bad substances that are supposed to really not be traveling to your brain are impacting your ability for the happy hormone, serotonin, and others to work properly. And the other things that can happen is you develop a leaky gut. And what the medical term for that is intestinal permeability, meaning that literally, the not so good stuff, let's just say, is leaking out and starting to. This is how inflammation spreads in your body. So it's something you want to avoid. Then there's neurooxidative stress and a few other things, but I'll focus on these three. So the neurooxidative stress is also related to how you eat. For example, if you pay attention to foods that are brightly colored. You've often heard people say, eat the color of the rainbow. But why is that? When you break it down, it's because of the polyphenols, the flavonols, the carotenoids, all of the bright color. Think about peppers and carrots and eggplant, all of these types of colorful vegetables. The wider the range of colors you eat, the better it is, because the antioxidant boost in those vegetables is super important. The other important thing to do is to add back in things like prebiotic foods and probiotic foods. And those, including fermented foods, again, go to really build up the army of immunity you have going on in your gut, because they're feeding those bugs with the right food to strengthen up, instead of the bad bugs taking over. You eat sugar and you eat processed foods and chips and snacks and pastries, the bad bugs are like having a party. They're like, yay, I'm feeling good, I'm taking over. And, in the moment you don't feel anything. Your body goes on and you don't feel anything. You may sort of, some people may say, I regret having that meal, but that's not it. It's the longer term effects that build up. And, those are sort of the tenets of how we try to describe the different conditions in the book. And what we've done is we've broken it down by the different diagnoses, and we try to give them, give some fun names and terms and make it a little more lighthearted, but really looked at a lot of science behind this to share with people foods to embrace and foods to avoid. So every chapter, if say you have one condition and that's the one you care about, you just go to that chapter, because sometimes there are also foods that go into many different categories across the different chapters. And then you know immediately, these are the things I want to stay away from. And we also have a recipe chapter. So at the end, we talk about what we're going to come on to later on about stocking your kitchen, how to eat, how to prepare meals, and we have recipes to match every chapter.
So great. Well, I do want to point out, you mentioned fermented foods, and that, I have to tell you, has been one of the plus sides of this pandemic for me. So I have long enjoyed kombucha as a drink for years and years and years now, but I actually took the dive this spring to actually begin to brew it myself, which is quite exciting. Oh, it's very exciting. A friend of mine down in London sent me the SCOBY, which is the living organism. And if anybody that's listening to this has ever been curious about kombucha, not only to drink, but also to create your own, let me tell you, I was so nervous at first, but it is so ridiculously simple to create and so cost effective. I used to buy bottles of kombucha for, $5, $6, 4 or 5 pounds every single time. And now I'm making like gallons upon gallons of this stuff.
Awesome.
And it's so good. And it really, I tell you, for me, kombucha is, it's kind of like a fizzy, almost vinegary kind of drink. But it really, I know when I drink a little bit of it at a time, my stomach is so much happier. My digestive system is working better. And I will say one step further, I have found that kombucha is a perfect alternative to a bottle of beer or a glass of wine at the end of the night.
Yeah, because it's fermented.
Exactly. And it's got a little bit of a fizz to it. I mean, it's,
That is cool.
And I think that has been a healthy change and alternative. No, I will say, Dr. Uma, because my children make fun of me, I have actually given my kombucha a name. Her name is Alexa. And I do talk to
Alexa.
I know. I do talk to her just the same as you would talk to a plant that, needs to thrive.
That needs some nurturing to grow. Absolutely.
It is literally a living organism. So anyways, there's that.
I commend you on that. And I'm so glad to hear that you noticed a difference, because
Absolutely.
I say to people all the time, we can look at this needing to kind of isolate at home in one of two ways, right?
Yeah.
We can say it's horrible, we can't see our friends, and we can get on all sorts of media to be in touch with them. But how can you use the time in a good way? Making kombucha, I love that story. What can we ferment or do, or for our families, ourselves, that will help. And I also really like the fact that you picked up on that fermentation, and it could be, maybe have a glass of kombucha instead of a beer, or maybe switch it out once in a while,
Yeah, and that's it. And, I think exactly. And it takes time and, to create a new habit and stick to it. But I think it's also something that's kind of wonderful as like a little kind of experiment for the family. So, my son will drink a little bit, and my daughter, she sticks her nose up to it. She just thinks it's weird, which is fine. Absolutely fine. I know that maybe 10 years ago, I would be the same exact way with sauerkraut or pickles or anything else. So, it takes time.
It takes time. And it takes a little effort to get set up and to do it. And you're home, so you have the opportunity to do it.
Yes. So let's dive into the brass tacks. So what do you feel are good foods to embrace, and what foods should we avoid in order for us to have a stronger immunity?
Okay. That's a big question. So the one thing I will say, May, that compared to the beginning of the pandemic, to where we are now, we also understand that there's something about this virus that can cause an inflammatory response. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, I want to preface this discussion by also saying that we now know things a little bit differently. So, I wouldn't go in the direction of, let me buy these 5 supplements or even 5 foods and eat tons of them because I really want my immunity to be higher. Yeah. Because here's the reality of how we should be eating. In the US, we call it the standard American diet, and it's sort of embarrassingly bad. It's a lot of processed foods, oils, pastries, bread, cereals, and things that, in other words, we just aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables and healthy foods here. So I would say that the best way to start is if kind of check in with yourself, and if you're not eating a good diet, what are the small tweaks you can make? Can you start to include more fresh fruits and vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds every single day? Why do I keep saying that? Because the fiber helps your gut. Why does it help your gut? It helps the good bugs, and those good bugs help your immunity. It's as simple as that. So think about what you're eating. If you're having that great shortbread cookie and coffee every day, maybe less often.
Yeah.
If it's something else, just less frequently, and then include the fresh fruits and vegetables that you can. High vitamin C foods are citrus fruits.
Yeah.
Red bell pepper is one of the highest in vitamin C, so that's always a good one. Be conscious of vitamin D because that helps you as well. So sunlight, and here's the cool thing about vitamin D, is direct sunlight, not through a window or when you're driving. None of that actually counts. They've actually found that it helps to get a little bit of sun. Of course, sunblock, all of that good stuff, but just a way to absorb that and get it into your body.
Yep.
So some simple things are check your diet, make some adjustments. And I say to everyone, don't do everything at once. You can't go from pizza, ice cream, chips and snacks, and lots of cookies to today I'm just going to have all of these different fruits, because you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's just unrealistic. So start to tweak one thing. I would say to people, especially during these times, say you went through a phase where there were fresh fruits and vegetables available, but people couldn't get to supermarkets, or I would say get frozen vegetables and fruit. If it comes with a little bag that has sauce in it, ignore that. And you can steam up some broccoli, carrots, beans, legumes, edamame, whatever it is, even in the microwave, and add a couple of steamed vegetables to your dinner and to your lunch every single day.
Yep.
And you could do it and simply squeeze a bit of lemon on it and have added back foods that are really going to help you. So something as simple, those simple tweaks, even if you make one habit change a week for you and your entire family, makes a difference. And then you sort of build it up. And what I will do is create sort of a personalized nutrition plan for the person who's sitting in front of me and work with them around what they're doing, it's also important to understand what their family is eating. I had a client who was eating healthy, but there was a snack cupboard for the kids. Yeah. And what would happen is he would, after he had his healthy meal, he would get to the snack cupboard. Mm-hmm. So what was happening is that he was then, absorbing and eating a lot more unhealthy calories. So I say simple tweaks, start there, add back healthy foods, fermented foods, prebiotics and probiotics. Those are sort of your basic armor. Prebiotics are found in things like onions, garlic, radish, Jerusalem artichoke, jicama, and, they have the type of fiber that's good and helps the good bugs in your gut. And then, the probiotic-rich foods, if you're having things like, yogurt that's made from dairy sources, just make sure they have the active life cultures and no added sugars. Because, in the U.S. we have our food labels are in grams, but we bake in pounds and ounces. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't realize that 4 grams is 1 teaspoon of sugar. Mm-hmm. So if you're having a yogurt that's that size and you're thinking, this is great for my gut, Dr. Uma said so, it could also have 18 grams of sugar. Yeah. So if it's a fruited yogurt, you want to be careful of that.
Yeah, we stick to the basics and the staples. And that, to be fair, we've been living in England for 6 years now, has really changed how we eat as a family on a whole. We eat more whole foods than ever before, but just because the concept of fast food just isn't a thing here. But, we stick to the basics like raw almonds, that's in our snack cupboard, sugar snap peas that are raw, carrots. My son eats about 3 dozen apples a week, he eats a lot of apples. Probably not that many. That's an exaggeration. But, and plain Greek yogurt. So these are the staples in our household. We also have frozen fruits. So that can be plopped onto some yogurt or in a smoothie fairly easily. Frozen mango, blueberry, and something called breakfast topper, which is like mango and papaya and things like that. And, I think you're right on when it comes to frozen foods, because I think for me at least, especially living in the UK where our refrigerators are very tiny. Having enough space in your fridge for fresh fruits and vegetables is tricky.
Oh, like a whole bunch of broccoli. It's
right,
not,
because
it's not that easy.
It will go off before you actually have enough time to prep and cook it. You know, another thing that's been working for us is my son's vegetarian. He's 10 years old, and he's the only veggie in our house. But, you know, he influences the rest of us eat. So I've found over the last few months of lockdown is that we're just not eating red meat anymore. And so we've been able to eliminate that fairly easy. But if you are a family that is reliant on hamburger and meatloaf and tacos and things, even just having one day a week that's a meat-free Monday, if you will.
Absolutely. The other thing is, I should say, the easy thing to incorporate, because we were talking about simplifying it for everyone, would be to add back spices. Because they're low calorie, no salt added. So I'm not talking about the ones that are in a blend that have sodium or salt added. But things like turmeric and black pepper, you can add that to a smoothie, you can add that to soup if you don't usually cook with it. And it's also, you know, there have been studies that looked at it being antiviral. So it has some fantastic properties. It's good for your gut. It's good for anxiety. It's good for your mood, from my perspective. But it also has so many other health benefits that are simple to do.
That's interesting. I've never tried black pepper in a smoothie. I'll have to go for the challenge and report back.
So let me explain that a second. So the active ingredient in curcumin is in turmeric is curcumin, not to be confused with cumin, which is a different spice. And so the curcumin, the absorption is activated by piperine, which is in black pepper. So a quarter teaspoon of turmeric a day. If it's not something you cook with, like I said, put it in a smoothie. And you just need a pinch of black pepper. You won't even taste it.
Okay.
When you add in some blueberries and stuff, you won't taste it. But it's just a healthy, easy thing to do.
Well, that is a challenge for all of us, to just pop in a little bit of turmeric into a smoothie and see if anybody notices. I started sneaking in raw spinach into my kids' smoothies. They have no clue. Don't tell them.
Exactly.
It works.
And, you know, if you put in spinach, you won't even notice the color. So,
exactly.
Chicken soup is another good one, or vegetable soup, whichever one you make. Are easy ways to just start to switch those habits that become automatic healthy habits. So.
Okay, but here's the thing, Dr. Irma. I mean, I think we've all heard, many people have told us over and over and over again, it's like, okay, just eat better, exercise more, sleep more, stress less, and you'll be fine, right?
Exactly.
And we know that that's what we're supposed to do, but then actually creating those actual habits, positive habit changes, like, why is it that it doesn't stick? Like, what can we do to actually make this stick this time?
So I think, for one thing, I believe that all of this time can be used as an opportunity. You know, there are habits, there are stress circuits in our brain. And basically, when you develop unhealthy habits brought on by stress, they tend to stick in a certain cycle. You almost have to trick yourself into healthier habits, whether it is that you do simple things like you change what's in your snack cabinet. So unlike the client that I had who was going for the cookies and the Doritos that his kids were taking to school, but you know, those were the choices they were making, but he was into that. If he now had transformed his cabinet the way that you have for your family, there wouldn't be those cookies and pastries for him to grab onto.
Yeah.
So those are probably some of the, what I consider to be, for want of a nicer word, environmental controls. So you really restock your home in a way that you don't have those unhealthy foods available, but you have them maybe on your treat day. You bring those foods in on that day. You know, you buy them for that day, and they're not there all the time. I find that people really start to make a change in how they eat when they start to feel a difference. It's like you mentioned the kombucha experience. Two things that it did. It was an amazing experience to have this, but you enjoy it. It kind of had a little bit of a taste of beer, but you felt good. Your tummy felt good when you drank it.
Yep.
Those are the things that help people make a change in what they eat. So you're absolutely right, May. People say eat this and don't eat that, and you know this is a good food. It's really exhausting. People feel like, what are you telling me that for? Is it really going to change? It's really about to make these positive changes. if, say, for example, your gut is inflamed, or you have bowel issues, or you have irritable bowel, or you have symptoms that are uncomfortable, sometimes those individuals end up in my office because they present with anxiety and panic, and they referred from their gastroenterologist. But in fact, when you really unpack the information, they're having an inflammation in their gut. And when you slowly and steadily start to teach them healthy habits, and I usually do, you just need to change one thing this week. And it could be that you're drinking enough water.
Yeah.
And that could be just a healthy habit that you start to integrate it. Give up the fruit juices or the soda if you're having that. Less coffee, still enjoy it. Bring back things like green tea, because those things and other teas are going to bring back healthy, how many things. I also like to help people make the habit change when they realize this is how much I can eat compared to that.
Yeah.
This is how many nutrients I'm going to get from here, and avoid the cookies or whatever it is. I understand there's that deliciousness that they want from a treat, but you almost have to unpack it for people and either show them visual ideas of how to do it. And it's not that people don't know, it's that sometimes you just need it broken down. It's like that quarter teaspoon of turmeric with a pinch of black pepper, or it's how much of yogurt should I have? Should I have blueberries at work? Yeah. What's the serving size? Just making it easy so that they can go through the changes. But when they notice themselves feeling good, maybe their tummy feels better, maybe they have fewer headaches, maybe they notice. I had someone over the period of the pandemic who said to me, "You won't believe it. Usually I eat out 3 times a week at a restaurant with my family or with his wife, and I've noticed that those skin patches I was telling you about, Dr. Naidoo, are starting to heal." And I was like, "Really?" And he, on his own, he wasn't doing anything different that he was supposed to be doing, but literally from changing his diet and eating at home, and not all days were healthy. There were struggles. The skin condition improved. So you have these examples of people who really start to feel better when they make those changes that you have to write. Everyone might say them, but it's the impact of what they do.
And I think that you're onto something 100% that we all forget, because when we reach for the shortbread cookie, the bag of chips, or whatever it might be, whatever our thing is, we're reaching for sometimes comfort or nostalgia or a sense of a feeling of happiness that food we had linked in our brain to some memory, some time that gave us that boost of whatever, right? And so I think that for me, you're absolutely right. It's looking at the decision wheel. Is there a way to rewire what the reward is in the decision? Because if it's like, okay, what's the options presented? I make a decision and here's the reward. So it's like, can you create a different reward, one that's a bit more healthy, that gives you the benefit of what it is you're trying to feel, think, experience in it.
Exactly. And also, if I could add to that, I think we have to do it with the feeling of non-judgment towards ourselves. I mentioned self-care earlier on. I think that's really important to be kind to ourselves, especially now where there's so many other stresses. Because we are craving the sugar in that cookie or whatever it is that's sweet. Because, sugar has been shown in basically brain imaging studies to act on the brain like drugs would. So we can't blame ourselves for the fact that we like it, and then we either want more French fries because they have sugar that you can't even taste, or other cookies or whatever it is, because your brain also has an impact on this, and neuroscience is involved. So I would say, try as you're suggesting as well, start to create those healthy habits if you can, and don't take on too many at once.
Yeah. So again, you can go back and listen to this episode and take more notes, and all the things are in our show notes as well that she's talking about. So if you simply go to the simplifierspodcast.com, you'll find it all there with all the links. But I heard you say fruits, vegetables, legumes, seeds, and beans. These are the things that we need to stock in our pantry. Anything else? Spices as well?
Sorry, yes. Nuts, seeds, and beans.
Yep.
Prebiotics and probiotics, we broke that down.
Yep.
And so part of that is fermented foods. Miso is a fermented food.
Yep.
Kimchi is a Korean pickle.
Yeah.
I would also, again, here suggest making it at home or checking the one that you buy, because it does tend to have a lot of sugar. So you just want to watch for that. Things like sauerkraut. So you want to have, if one of these appeal to you, or kefir, the soured yogurt, again, unfruited and unsweetened. Those are things that, and by the way, you can make kefir at home. So that's another thing you can add to your armamentarium. And then spices, capsaicin in chili pepper, turmeric with the pinch of black pepper, ginger and garlic, all have had immune boosting properties. But again, I'm not saying go and get pills or capsules of them. I'm just saying cook with them. Keep them either as a dried spice if you can, or a fresh spice, because those are good for you. And that's a good starting place to get cracking.
And the ultimate goal is so that you, when you start to take control over the foods that you consume, you can start to wean yourself off of these medicines and things that are prescriptions that are being prescribed, like the sertraline or Zoloft or whatever, that you can actually take control of your health and your mental health with the foods that you eat.
Exactly. And you want to do that with your doctors. You kind of put the discussion with your doctor, because he or she might feel that you want to do it more slowly. They want to make sure that you're feeling good before you start to taper medication. And, the nutritional psychiatry is a field that has been around for a very long time. It's only gotten the name in the last decade. Yeah. But we've always been trying to help people through the use of nutrition. And the best way to think about it is, if you're severely ill and you're severely depressed, or, feeling suicidal, or you know someone who has a manic episode or has lost touch with reality, food is not the first line. But once they get some form of treatment with a doctor, food is a huge part of how they can recover. So, even from the beginning, if they feel well enough to eat well, absolutely. But it's not going to take away the acuity of that episode. But you can certainly work with your doctor to decide what dose of medication you need and how to feel better from there.
And so if any of this is intriguing to you, I highly recommend checking out Dr. Uma's latest book. It's called This Is Your Brain on Food. Now, in the UK, it's going to have a slightly different title, right? What's it called in the UK?
In the UK, it's releasing as the Food Mood Connection. So it'll have the same cover, same content, and I think we changed the spelling of some of the words so that it fits with the English vocabulary and grammar, but everything else is the same.
Fantastic. So the book is being released in the UK right around September 2020, and the book is being released in the States right now. So wherever you can buy books online or otherwise, you can find her book, This Is Your Brain on Food, an indispensable guide to the surprising foods that really help fight depression, OCD, anxiety, ADHD, trauma, and so much more. So I highly recommend getting your hands on it. And as you say, if you have any of those specific conditions, you can zoom into a certain chapter of the book and start to learn about, okay, I've got OCD, so what foods should I embrace and what foods I should avoid, right?
Exactly.
Yes, amazing. Fantastic. So, Dr. I have a few questions as we wrap up that I always like to ask everybody. And again, thank you so much for your time today. I think that this is incredibly important information. And if we can just take one simple step at a time, I think we all can feel a bit more empowered by the food and drinks that we consume in the next month, 6 months to the year. So first question is this: what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
So it's a blog written by young medical students and doctors, and I want to say it's called MD Lingo. And really what it's about is they're debunking myths about nutrition. All of them, talk about some form of food and other topics that they're trying to speak about differently. And I have a lot of fun reading it because, you'll read about things like, did you know, chocolate is a fermented food and it could actually therefore be good for your gut, and, stuff that we don't think about and talk about in those terms. So that's a blog that I'm having a lot of fun with. Fantastic.
Well, we will put the link in the show notes for people if they want to check out that blog as well. So So tell us, who's one person in your network, somebody that you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things, and we could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast as well.
So I'm going to name one of my medical mentors who happens to be male and who really helped me to understand nutrition better, because he, would help guide the process of the book by helping me break down some of the science behind it.
Okay.
And that person is someone who wrote my book, Dr. Walter Willett. So
brilliant. Okay.
I just think that his career has been amazing, and I follow what he does.
Excellent. Well, we will definitely link up with him. And also, if people want to find out more about him, they can click in the show notes as well. So I believe that gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what's one thing you're grateful for today?
I found myself waking up this morning, and it was going to be a busy day, and I decided to take a moment and to take a deep breath and to be grateful for having the opportunities, rather than thinking of it being, oh, this is such a busy day, I've got to sit with this, so-and-so's looking for that, I've got this meeting on, and really to take a deep breath, take a step back and say, you're going to talk to me today. That's fun. And not just saying that, it was like, how do you in that moment go from overwhelm to where's the joy in this? And I'm so grateful that I have, a safe place to live, and I have this opportunity to share my work. Yeah. And it really helped to reset my moment. And that was just from today. So thank you for asking.
Oh, and I'm grateful for you as well. So thank you for, again, making time today. So all of your social media links are in the show notes. Again, if people want to get connected to you or check out your book, again, go to the simplifierspodcast.com and find it there. My last question for you is this, Dr. Uma. Someone somewhere is listening to this episode right now, and she is having just a not very happy tummy. Sure, her stomach is in knots. Her head feels like it's going 80 bazillion miles an hour. Things are very stressful, and she's dealing with some big change. From a point of view of her immune system, what's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
I would say take a deep breath and realize that there are ways that you can get help. That this too shall pass. This is something that is correctable in the work that I do. So if it's something you can do and you have to go buy it in a store, get some turmeric and black pepper. You probably have some black pepper at home. Think about having vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, Brussels sprouts that tend to be in the same family. That will, if you can even chop them up, steam them, have them in a salad, they are going to start to feed your gut the right way. Yeah. And even that simple step will be a good way and a good start to starting to feel better.
And this too shall pass. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Uma. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah.